there's an artificial excess demand for real estate because he's hoarding it, not real estate that he needs, and so he's asking these prices. And if you're going to own a home, you have to succumb to the price. And the bank looks at one thing: can you make the payment? And if you can make the payment, they loan you the money. So sure, that might have been a $35,000 home built in 1963, and now some bastard wants $1 million for it. And believe me, we don't possibly benefit from this increasing cost. All a $1 million house built in 1963 for $35,000 is a stupid asshole's house. If you need a house, have you made any money? You pay $1 million for it. All you're talking about is the principal. Then there's all the interest on that. So what is that? You're really paying $4 million for it. I argued with a real estate guy about this in around 1970, when I was a kid, and I says, okay, he thought he was a smart guy. He says, and I says, okay, so tell me something. In all this money that you're saying we're going to make for all these prices that are going up, how do you figure the profit? What's your formula? And he looked at me like, hey kid, don't dare challenge me with that because I don't have the answer, And I said, no, you tell me. You claim it. Now you prove it. And I wouldn't let him off the hook. And I says, okay, so you're telling me that I buy this house for $100,000 that was just built 7 years ago for $35,000, and you're telling me that I'm going to sell it for $200,000 in so much time, and you don't know that this trend can continue yet. You can't demonstrate that to me. What's its principle? Why is it perpetually sustainable? How can that possibly be? Can't even give me an answer. Okay, but you're just telling me I'm going to sell it for $200,000. Okay, and so I'm going to make double my money, and I want to know how you figure that. Is it just simply $200,000 that you say I'm going to get after spending $100,000 in principal for it? Is that the way you figure it? And he goes, well, of course. And I says, how do you account for all the interest? If I pay $300,000 for that house and I get $200,000 for it, it costs me $100,000 to make that profit which is nullified to the extent of $200,000. I say to him, and he says, you can't figure it that way. I says, well, how else could you figure it? He says, well, because the money's got to cost you something.
Yeah.
So, have you ever made a profit? That's the question. And all this is you're borrowing your own promise to pay into circulation. In other words, I promise to pay you $100,000 for this $100,000 home, and somebody says, no, you can't do that. And there's a strange law in existence, which these guys who want to publish our promissory obligations to each other simply had their own guys right. There isn't any principle that justifies this. You can look as hard as you want forever. It doesn't exist.
Yep.
There is no justification. You can search all history. That's why they put Christ on the cross.
Yep.
Because they couldn't justify it. He was right. They were wrong. They're money changers. And they can't afford for us to understand what that means. Because we would have nothing of it. It's as if, it's something like this. We're a society back in that time. And we exist by barter. Okay? So, you come to the market and you've got 3 goats and you want to trade them for whatever, 27 chickens or a dog or whatever. And you do your business like this, and you have this market every Friday or whatever it is. You do this, and that's how you do your business. And then one day, some mean, nasty guy who's only, 4'6", and has three great big giant friends with an IQ of about 35 on average apiece. Claims that he owns all the property that this market is traded on, and then he realizes, well, if I just claim that, they'll just move somewhere else. And he says, and I'm the new ruler of this land, and you can't trade anywhere else. Okay, and what's more, when you come with your 3 goats that you might want to trade for 27 chickens, we give you a receipt for your 3 goats, and you have to pay us 7 goats for that receipt, and now trade.
Yeah, that's perfectly good,
everyone
right?
There should be just extremely unhappy with this. What do you mean? Who are you? You're not giving us anything, and you come here with your 3 bastards and your little 4'6" self, and we're just going to bend over and let you do it to us. Sure, buddy. How's this? Rock in the face, club on the back of the head to the other guy, wabba, all taken out of commission. Just
we have
like
an expression for that over here.
Good.
It's called "take it out of this."
Well, I can tell you an interesting story about that when I was a kid. Actually, when I was a little kid, one of the things I got for Christmas or a birthday or something was a child's record player, and it had this little child's set of child's fairy tales on it, which were back in those days were meant to teach. And one of these stories was called 3 Billy Goats Gruff.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I was, this was like, oh man, this goat was my hero. and I had to play that over and over and over again. And it's about basically a troll who takes a station at a bridge or whatever, and anytime somebody tries to cross it, he demands payment. And these goats wouldn't have anything of it, and this big Billy Goat butts him off the bridge, and they just cross, is the basic story of it. But anyway, I'm just a little kid, and we're crossing the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge every once in a while. I noticed my dad giving money to toll booth and attendant, and I'm like 3 years old, and I said, Dad, can I give him the money? And I'm hanging my arm out the window as we drive up to the boat to give this guy a nickel or a dime, and that was pretty cool. And then I sit down in the seat of the car, and I'm wondering, well, shit, that's not like it is in my story. I said, man, that goat just like, I should have sucked that guy in the stomach, and we should have just driven across the bridge. And so I'm thinking, I wonder why we don't really do it that way. I'm just a little kid, And, we go across the bridge again. I give the guy a nickel, and I'm wondering about this. And the next time we go across the bridge, it's not a nickel, it's a dime. And I'm going, Dad, we gave him a nickel before, now we're giving him a dime. What the hell's going on here, And so I ended up, asking all kinds of questions. Why do we pay for this at all? And they try to give me an answer. Well, the men that built the bridge had to be paid. And I said, well, weren't they paid? Yes, but so a debt exists, and we're paying the debt. And I said, well, is the debt going up as we pay it off? But these are the questions that we should all be asking as adults, because we do not have the right answers. We're just being lied to, and we're not paying off the bridge. We're paying for the bridge and all the further debts and all the further multiplication of the debts, because all this money is borrowed into, existence at deficit spending, which is just multiplying, and we're putting problem upon problem after problem after problem. I recently went through California I'm a native Californian, hadn't been in there years. I couldn't believe it. I drove from, the southern end of, Las Vegas up through 95 or 99, whatever it is, and, on up Sacramento. I could not believe the degeneration of the state that I was born in. I couldn't believe it. There were tumbleweeds packed up against the middle of the freeways. When I was a kid, and in the 60s, we had 5, 6, 7 lane freeways going everywhere, and I mean one car in one lane every mile. not only that, they're perfectly maintained. They're, all the costs of installing all the ice plant. And think back to the Victorian era, all the woodwork, ornate, intense manual labor that was invested in building, homes and whatnot, which we can't afford anymore. Where did all this go?
Yeah, exactly. You see, I used to mind an old guy. My wife works in the care industry. There's an old guy I used to every now and again. I'd have to fill in, but there was an old guy. He used to live in Portmarnock in Dublin, and he said to me one day. He said, see that road out there? And I mean, this road. I mean, it was just cars zipping up and down, left and right. He said, when I was a kid, and he lived there, he said, I used to be able to close my eyes and walk across that road.
Yeah. I used to play football on Highway 1 in Alima, and I mean, a few cars had come by, and that wasn't that long ago. Population is an issue, and it has its effects, but without economy, you can't support even what you have, and you can support increasing population. I think we need to get that under control too. That's another problem, and so it's another matter. It's not a matter of economics.
Well, there's a video, actually. Can I just recommend a video that people should watch in relation to that? It's called The Most Important Video You Should Ever See. It's on the exponential mathematic function. It's on YouTube by a retired mathematical professor. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But it deals with that very issue. I highly recommend it.
I've had my thoughts for a long time on that one as well, and my ideas are, I think, the only actual justice. And I mean, I personally value open space and preservation of the land in its original condition as much as possible. I think if people want to populate, they have a right to do that, but so long as they insulate the consequences to themselves. So that means, dividing a right to own land amongst more people equates to less land per person, because it infringes upon ways and rights to live, which are, I think, more justified.